I was looking at something then that took my mind away.
Okay.
But let me get back to the proverb. He who does not mend his clothes will soon have none. He who does not mend his clothes
will soon have no clothes.
Yep, that is in the offing. Yep.
Okay. Mend your clothes if they need mending.
Stitch in time saves 9.
Indeed it does. Saves a whole lot of stitches so you don't have to worry about them later.
Yes.
All right. They were onto something. They definitely were.
You know, there are so many things that happen at the same time. And when there are so many things, and then you're in the information age as we are now in, you really, it's like you're spoiled for choice as to what to give your attention to. See, like now, we have the Devolution conference taking place, right?
Yes.
Okay, speeches are being made, things are being said, and our entire attention is actually at the Devolution conference. Now, with the Devolution conference comes the discussion of, okay, this Devolution conference, what is it for exactly? When it was started, there was a goal behind it, okay? Peter Mushandu raised very many issues yesterday and talked about the chest thumping that goes on. A little chest thumping every once in a while is not a bad thing. A little blowing of your own trumpet is not a bad thing. But if we balance the chest thumping and the blowing of the trumpet against what ought to have done, what is done, then you will find there's always a very big gaping hole. There's a complete disconnect between what is being said as having been done against what it is that ought to have been done and has not been done. Because amidst all this pomp and ceremony, because there's a lot of pomp and there's a lot of ceremony, people are still going hungry, just so that we understand.
Yep.
There are people who have no idea how they're going to have the next meal. There are parents who don't know how their children are going to go to school. The people can't pay their rent. The problems we had before devolution haven't gone anywhere. We're going to have a bumper crop of maize. Hallelujah for that.
Yes.
Okay? When it comes, it will be a wonderful thing. If it comes. But in the meantime, I do not hear conversations about addressing the very things. I hear there is a bipartisan committee that has been set up which is intended to look into this. I hear, and this is supposed to be very good news, that we are going to anchor it in law. Just like we did in the year 2008.
Yes.
And
in fact, it was passed yesterday really quickly.
Yes, meaning they agreed with it. But however, if the 2008 understanding, which was anchored in law, gave us, at best, what I can now look at with hindsight as a reprieve. Why are we back where we were before? Why do we need a similar solution to a problem that we ought to have done away with completely? If they can do this in a day, why don't we just change this constitution and ensure that the opposition is really the opposition? Meaning, this thing of crisscrossing and changing, this thing of majority and minority leadership, forget about it. Have those who are in power and have those who officially are not in power and are in the opposition. So that we know these fellows in the opposition are going to waste no opportunity at all to find as much fault as they possibly can so that they can take over.
So I hear you to say then that if we actually wanted to do something about a bad situation, then you can actually do it.
You've got it.
And you don't need anybody to come and remind you, repeatedly that such and such a thing needs to be done. Well, it would appear that folks need the president to remind them that corruption is a bad thing and that we should not be involved in it. And so the president, at this same Devolution conference that you speak of yesterday, came out in no uncertain terms, and he was very, very, sure about the words that he spoke. And he read the Riot Act to governors over graft. Remember the conversation that we had yesterday? That certain things cannot happen. We had the governor for Vihiga County a couple of days ago tell us that the one problem that is going to cripple devolution if it is not handled in this country is corruption. All these other things, CIDPs, do whatever you want to do, annual development plan, etc., if you like, but if you don't take care of corruption, it's going to be an issue. So the president was tough talking yesterday, and he sent a strong message to governors, and he said he will not stand for graft in the counties. So up until yesterday, if you had been doing anything and we're actually going to call you out, all right? He was speaking, of course, at the Devolution conference, which focused on county governments as the hubs of economic development. He called for a robust, there's that word again, performance management system in counties to track service delivery and hold officials accountable. None of this business of saying, well, it was somebody else's job, but I just couldn't get round to it because of 1, 2, 3. He celebrated the progress of Kenya in devolution over the past decade. And he chose the 3-day conference in his hometown of Eldoret to warn against the mismanagement of funds in counties, regretting that many have become hotbeds of corruption. It's a timely message to be delivered when the conference is being hosted in the head of state's home in Uasin Gishu, which is embroiled in a scandal over a student airlift program in Finland, calling it devolved criminality. Ruto called out counties over corruption. He said the people of Kenya deserve better. We must rid devolution of corruption, he said, on a day when Uasin Gishu County Senator Jackson Mandago, who is the immediate former governor, was placed in police custody over the overseas study program. It's not the first time that he has said this. He's coming out tough talking, and he's at home when he's doing this.
And it's not the first time he has talked tough either.
Well, no, it's not. But look at the optics that play out here. He's at home, number one. Number two, he's at a conference whereby the very folks that are the heads of counties where it is said that criminality, corruption, impunity, all these ETs is ensconced. And he's telling them, my friends, we cannot continue like this. The whole point of devolution was to make sure that services, whether when they're accountable and when you're being responsible, are brought right to the hands of people. We cannot see this kind of thing happen. Money that's meant for making sure that people of Kenya thrive, then you're putting it into your pockets. We have projects that were supposed to have been completed. White elephant projects are all over the place in the country like a jungle. Some counties have 4 billion shillings in uncompleted projects. I mean, come on. What do you people? Wow, we said that we're going to deliver services, and this is the kind of thing that we get. Absolutely not.
But that amounts to a roadside declaration, really.
You think he's not serious about what he's saying?
He has said many things which he sounds serious when he says, and there are many. On the campaign trail, this issue of corruption was talked about many occasions, and the zero tolerance to it was mentioned more times than I can count. If any government was serious about this change, in my view, the first thing they would do is reinstate 2 institutions, the Transition Authority and the Constitutional Implementation Commission. Because everything we seem to be talking about here has to deal with the Constitution, its implementation, the problems around it. And this issue of transition, where as we were being told by our guest Peter yesterday, you have a situation where, and we've said it ourselves on many occasions, over 60% of the money that is supposed to go to health remains at the national headquarters, and yet it's a devolved function. So what I'm saying is, we seem to have a problem with the implementation. If you don't have a body that specifically deals with implementation and you leave it to this parliament that we have, to this National Assembly that we have, this thing will never, ever, ever, ever take place. Because everything that I seem to see, we keep losing out on the Constitution. The very heart of the Constitution, the written letter of it, it keeps being moved around and twisted and turned to the point where we're going to get to a point where we'll be asking, that new Constitution, where exactly is it really?
But you know why it's not implemented?
Yes. Because
there's such parts where you feel that this implementation really ought to take place in order for certain things to be realized. Why it doesn't happen is that it doesn't sit well with certain people. That there's certain things, there's certain freedoms of yours that will be curtailed if you actually implement this thing. So this is like Monopoly. This is people are rolling the dice and then seeing what they'll be able to get in terms of property and freebies. It's not about taking services to people. Be fooled if you think actually that the majority of people who seek public office in this country today, or rather a number of countries, are actually doing it because they want you to thrive as the common man.
Look at the standards we use. You see, look, if you look at East Africa, I'm going to give you a perspective. East Africans will tell you this Kenya is a wonderful country. It is an extremely wonderful country. Simple fact. It could be more wonderfuler, if you ask me.
Well done.
Yes, thank you. Why do they say this? They look at our elections, they look at our protests, and they say, well, there's tear gas, people get shot, but you don't see situations where leading lights, leading leaders are grabbed, thrown unceremoniously into lorries, some are beaten. See, that's the yardstick. So you are comparing us with a situation when one of our neighboring countries, opposition leaders know they will get beaten. It's part of the dance. You campaign, protest, they'll break a window of your vehicle and throw a tear gas canister into the vehicle or spray it directly into your face. What am I saying? I am saying that if you look today, we were having demonstrations at the same time as France and Italy. Same.
Yes.
Same. How many people died? Apart from the young man who was shot dead by police in France, how many people died? Precisely. You see, we can get there. Now, if we look at what President Uhuru did, we forget easily. It's during his tenure that the Transition Authority, those guys were given 3 years. How do you give a new and important process such as this one just 3 years? To do what exactly? The commission, you give them a term of 5 years to implement the constitution. How? Both those institutions have been given a minimum of 10 years because then you have an idea, okay, we now have a clear roadmap. We can see who has been monitoring the gains and the losses. Who? They would have, those institutions, now you ask, do I expect civil servants to do their job? Yes, I do. And we have examples.
You would hope.
Yes. Look at what the Auditor General does. Do you really think that if that office was not independent, the Auditor General would have been able to do exactly what she does? She wouldn't.
CT, if the Constitution Implementation Commission was reinstated, they are coming to implement something using the same people who sit in these positions today who are not doing them. What is to guarantee that these individuals coming back would actually make sure that the job is done?
It's not the individuals.
Or is it the knowledge that there is a body who is making sure that we're doing our job?
Remember, those institutions disappeared. They no longer exist. When they existed, you knew where to point fingers at directly, and you knew where to expect change to come from. These independent bodies that were set, many of these independent, they were set up independent. The reason was because it was understood that even within government you need a check and a balance, and you need to narrow down accountability to a unit and say, you guys, this is your job. Like the National Land Commission, whose duty has been so confusing to me. The very thing you hear, you ask, is that Ministry of Land? You told no.
It's commission.
Commission. So, okay. Something that's commission. What needs to be done and is not done outstrips that conversation. The things that ought to have been done. Why is every time the National Land Commission is mentioned, something terrible is being mentioned? Why? If the things they were doing are what they ought to do and the things were good, that is what would be mentioned. But they exist. So you see, when I'm talking now, I'm focusing National Land Commission. I know exactly where to take my complaint. But when it isn't there, then you leave it in the hands of people who are guaranteed not to do justice to whatever needs to be done.
So then if there is no deliberate action in trying to make sure some of these things are actually done, then the reading of the Riot Act, like what we saw the president do yesterday and what he's done a couple of weeks ago, and maybe even before that, speaking to people directly and telling them, look, this corruption thing, this impunity language that all of you seem to be speaking, we're not going to accept it. We're saying that it can be words, but it's just that. If the words are not then followed by a gust of action, then we would see a problem. So would one say, for example, when he spoke very clearly about this criminality that has taken place in Uasin Gishu County under the auspices of the former governor, that when you see an individual like that arrested and ask questions over their involvement in this thing, could this then be where function follows form? And the government has spoken, the president has spoken and said, we're not going to accept this.
Not yet.
And then no sooner than had he spoken, we see an arrest taking place.
Not yet.
Bado.
Not yet. I want to see these people prosecuted. I want to see someone going to jail. Okay? If no one goes to jail, it's a charade.
Nothing. So even paying back the money is not enough.
How can it possibly be enough? Then it would mean that everyone who's been accused of theft, they return the money.
All they have to do is
okay.
return the money.
Or the only problem is if you kill someone, the person can't resurrect. So if you say you are sorry, then everything is okay. Look, we don't have a problem when it comes to applying the law to people who are defenseless and don't have any power.
Keep them in jail for 5 years.
Yes, or throw them in jail with life sentences. If this law is applied evenly, then we will see it. When I see it, me, I'm a seeing is believing guy. When I see it, I will believe. Right now, I'm saying we've seen something that hasn't happened a long time happening, but I want to see it coming to a conclusion. If indeed what the immediate former governor of Wasingishu said, that some of these are not quite what they appear to be, and they can be proven in court that they are not actually quite what they are, then we will accept that the man has a point. This process has to take place. And even his side, because according to our laws, that man is innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
I will want to hear what he has to say, and I will want this thing determined by a competent court. When I've heard, then I will say. But for now, I know he was arrested. That's it. Everything else, I do not know. I will wait and see.
Okay. We essentially are saying that you can talk about telling us that corruption is bad if you want to apply something as simple as good and bad in terms of a description. It is wrong. There are certain things that we do. I mean, what did he say? If you look at that and you want to quote it again, he celebrated the progress Kenya has made in devolution over the past decade, and he then warned against mismanagement of funds in counties, regretting that many have become hotbeds for corruption. We know these things. We see them. You can see that individuals are becoming enriched by the proceeds of mismanagement of these funds, by the criminality of this devolved units. We can see it's criminal. It's criminality that's being exemplified here.
It is.
That public funds are being misused, projects that they stall, people are being paid for work that they don't finish, and then you come and you start them all over again. Funds are being mismanaged, and people complain every day about the fact that, well, we don't get enough from the National Treasury. Okay, the one that you have gotten, what exactly have you done with it? So they're being called hotbeds for corruption. My question is, if you know that these things are happening, if you know the individuals who are behind them, if you are really invested in making sure that corruption comes to an end, why then do we not see the action that you're talking about then? Why then does that not happen? And for me, that is proof that you're actually serious about fighting corruption. You know who these individuals are. You can trace and track and see how far back it goes. You know the kinds of money that has been spent. You have entire systems within government that track payments. There's no way a trail will not be left behind. You know where these things are. Why not do something about it, I think becomes the question. It becomes more than words. It becomes a little bit frustrating.
See, we have a legal system within a legal system. There is what is written and what the Constitution tells us and what our laws tell us. And then there's how we actualize them. Because that trail that you speak of exists. But is it followed to bring the culprits to book? No. In many cases, it's what you use to line your own pockets. You see, every position of authority that one is given, yes, there is the mandate for public service, which we all know, and that's what's written. But in reality, for many people, it is a job you've been given to ensure you enrich yourself as much as you possibly can.
Why is it that in other societies, in other economies, ask yourself the question that if your name, as in your name, is mentioned in the same sentence that 10 shillings has been stolen, they just mentioned your name. They didn't say that you're the one who took it. They didn't say, CT, we saw you. Your name is mentioned. Do you know what you do?
You resign.
You step aside. You resign. You say, no, because an environment has been created whereby impunity, corruption, mismanagement is frowned upon, so much so that you do not want to be associated with it. But somehow here, the cookie jar, we are even inside the cookie. We are not. We are
not the hand. We are inside.
We are inside the cookie jar, and we have covered our heads with the cover
inside
of the cookie jar, and we're still saying, I will never resign. What are you talking about? It's not my fault. Look, where is my name there? Why is that same thing not possible? Why can we not imbibe that?
Let me give you a theory. This is a perspective. Should we go on a break first?
Let's go on a break. Well, no, go ahead and.
All right. You see, this presidential system experiment is not working for us. It's an experiment. We were to 10 years. This thing is not working. It's not working because the problems we are now speaking of are problems, many of them we inherited from the Uhuru government. When Chapter 6 got attacked, when these commissions that I'm speaking of were brought to a halt, it was in President Uhuru's time. And who's to say that what we are now seeing in this government did not exist in the Uhuru government? You see, with a presidential system in an African country, we are not very many decades away from single-party states, which are essentially what the West calls democracies.
Yes.
No dictatorships.
Dictatorship. Yes. Democracy under different guise.
Yes. A democracy of a single state. But it's a okay.
It's a dictatorship.
Oh, yes. But you see, the moment you have a presidential system, do you know what you've also devolved? You've devolved the one-party state to the counties. Because if you look at the configuration of most of our counties, they are representative of the party and the community that is there, because the communities are aligned to parties. If it is Eastern Province, Machakos, and what have you, it's a wiper dictatorship. The majority of people in the governor's positions and the ones who are assembly members, they belong to wiper. So it's wiper in charge of the county system. You go to the western part of the country, it's ODM, then with the smattering here. But essentially, you go to North Rift, it is UDA. The one-party system was devolved to the counties. So essentially, they are dictatorships. Any wrangling that they have has nothing to do with good governance and assisting people. It's how much money everybody should get. The National Assembly pitches a fit. It's because of allowances. How many times have you heard the National Assembly pitching a fit because the citizenry of a county are not being accorded their just desire or the dues that are their rights? Tell me, how often have you ever seen it?
How many times have you seen it?
Me, I haven't seen it. Every time it is a money issue, and it's a money issue that is personal. They are supposed to get money and they have not gotten money. That's what it is. But beyond that, this democracy that we speak of, if there's one place it doesn't exist, it's in the counties. And that's why it is easy to perpetuate wrong, because you belong to the same club called a political party.
Right.
You speak the same language and you do what you do. So you're
not going to be a disruptor.
Who's going to question? Where is this thing going to come from?
You will not be a disruptor.
And if you're a disruptor, first of all, that party, you'll be removed from that party.
You will face the music.
Yes.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.